We keep saying we want equality. Equality is half of the pie. And what we want is equity, a piece of the pie. If I have to do everything like a man, then nobody's going to hold the door for me. Nobody's asking me, hey, are you okay? Do you want water? And doing all the things that great guys do because you're capable. Go get your own water, open your own door.
What do we need to know about Rachel?
I have a lot of chutzpah. I think, I don't know, like I grew up with chutzpah and that's what got me in trouble, but also got me where I am.
Tell us your driven origin story.
I grew up in New York, upstate, super religious background, Hasidic. When we spoke the first time and you were like driven and the chaos, I paused for a moment and I was like, wow, I really gave a difficult time for the people in my life. Like I didn't notice that until recently. Like I took teachers for a ride. I took principals. I challenged my parents in a big way, but like literally breaking stuff. Like I couldn't help but like I would work on a project and I would end up breaking it, not finishing. My mother always said, like, you always start something, but you never complete anything. And that story like goes with me wherever I go. I'm like, oh, you're not completing this. Oh, you're not completing this. But then finding out that I'm driven, I'm able to love myself more because I know that that's what makes me unique.
It is a gift and a curse, both to us personally and to the world, in both directions. And it's a gift to the world and a curse to the world. Did you get the ADD label? Young ADHD?
I didn't. I think because it's our family. Like I made a lot of my siblings take your driven assessment. All of them had huge red circles. You know, we thought like we're the normal ones. Everybody else is crazy.
Why'd you worry about? Tell us about that side of you. Why
Why?
push against the norm?
So I just want to take a moment to talk about the fact that people assume that drivens are only entrepreneurs. And I think what's important for me is for people to understand that there are women, there are wives, there are people out there that are super driven, and we don't recognize our drivenness, and that's the chaos that we create. Like, I will cook 3 soups at one because, like, if I'm making one, I might as well make three. And I watched my mom do that too. My mom is super driven. She would sew up clothes for all the kids. She would want to plan all of this in one day. We didn't appreciate it. Nobody appreciates enough that driven and entrepreneurship doesn't have to come together. Like entrepreneurship is only one form of being driven, right? When Gino Wickman, founder of EOS, told me, you're driven. And I was like, yeah. He's like, you bet you are. That's when this whole journey started. But the Gretchen Rubin assessment.
I don't.
So there are 4 types of people, I believe. There's a conformist, a rebel, but I just have this need to rebel on law and order. Like you're gonna tell me what to do, and I'm gonna challenge and defy it.
It's not accepting someone else's narrative as your truth.
Absolutely. I have to create my own art. I had a teacher in ninth grade that told me, I don't want you to make the mistakes that I did. And I said, excuse me, you got to make those mistakes now. I want my turn too.
Our brain structure, the default modal network, and I promise not to go into too much brain parts, but we're different. And we do not have that executive function that loves to grab onto a narrative and just make this logical linear path through life. And as long as I stay on the path, everything's going to be familiar and normal and I don't have to be scared. We, on the other hand, are absolutely, we see right through it. And that capacity to see through it and then really understand that they're not broken, they're different. And as you said earlier, and I think that's where we're going this year is, what's normal is what is I'm experiencing. And not, I was joking second grade, that why didn't the rest of the class get what a waste of time this is memorizing a bunch of crap? And it's like, how is this going to suit us in my life?
Right.
And that, you carried that all the way through. And so you didn't have any explanation for why you were different. When did you really know you were different than most?
Okay, first of all, I found the 4 tendencies, and it's upholder, questioner, obliger, and rebel. So there are people that are questioned, but then they still conform. And then there's rebels. And I'm pure 100% rebel. Growing up with parents that gave us very high standards, like 100 was not good. You had to get 100 plus extra credit. It formed a certain elitist kind of mentality in our household. We had to be the best. But, you told me once, like, I'm not a right brain, I'm a left brain. So I can't remember names. I couldn't memorize any of that. I used to laugh through it. And I used to look at all the girls and be like, why are you spending time memorizing? Like, this is a waste of time. But on the other hand, I regret not listening to and not putting my mind to algebra, because when I got out of school and I wanted to learn how to code, I was like, oh, that's why I need algebra. Like, if they would have told me the reason behind it.
Yeah, and that's that big picture. Once we get the big picture, that's once I figured out, I had to do a whole bunch of BS check boxes to get this PhD.
Right.
Get out of my way. Let me just get through it. And that big picture thinking. And once we understand that this is going to be a use to me, we'll get it good enough, master it actually, and then move on really quickly. It is a gift, but the curse. Anybody really push back and try to contain you over the years?
Yeah. The school system, my parents, but being one of 16 has easily got lost. Like, I was able to, I was able to read books, listen to stuff. My parents really appreciated academia. So it was like, it was okay to listen and educate yourself. Like, we loved education, but that's also what made us different from my neighbors, right? But then when I turned 14, 15 and started having a lot of questions, and I had a teacher that I raised my hand and I said, you're totally wrong. And she couldn't handle it. And I got expelled or detention. I don't remember. That's where the difficulty started of like, okay, how do I keep one foot in, one foot out, you know?
How do I, and that's where we're going this year with this is, it is a farmer's world. This is not our world. And I teach that to my 18-year-old clients on occasion, that there is many authorities you need to respect. You don't have to agree with, but you do need to comply unless you're willing to pay the consequences.
When people ask me, like, are family values important? Or why do I have to conform? I'm like, look, there are stop signs on every street. That's authority. That's somebody telling you what to do. If you're a rebel, you'll be like, I'm going to drive through this. You're hurting yourself. So becoming a mature person is understanding boundaries.
That ability to actually abide by boundaries. And I have a podcast way back that talked about boundaries specifically, and boundaries are internal. And this is a key thing of why Driven's got to start doing the personal work, stabilizing central nervous system. Because example I always use is the sound of people chewing with their mouth open, snacking food, makes my central nervous system crawl out of my skin to the point where it used to make me go off in a huff. Like, God, you're disgusting. And so I had to set an external boundary to protect my central nervous system from literally vomiting. 16 years ago, vividly, it was 17 years ago, April 17 years ago, I'm on a meditation retreat, first real deep Zen meditation retreat, and there's 20 people eating in silence. I'm sitting in the middle of it, just experiencing my central nervous system for what it was. but this model in the driven mastery model to where you really are stepping out into that observer. And I could just observe and discern that that person was worse than this person and that person's not bad, and actually be with the sensations without having to set that external boundary. And so it is a really key concept. But again, I don't feel like stopping at a stoplight. That's a feeling. And if you can't override that feeling, you're going to kill somebody.
Here's an observation. I think as drivens, we're very good at observing others, calling out inconsistencies, calling out bullshit, but we're not good at observing ourselves. So when I was 14, 15, the reason I felt so uncomfortable is because I saw through people, right? I had that detector and I could see liars and people that are just putting on shows, but I couldn't see myself in that picture.
You got it. Yeah. Now when did that come online?
Went to college for business behavioral science because I grew up in a business household. My parents owned a business. But to me, the most important and most interesting part was observing how employees acted very differently when my parents were around versus when they weren't. And I always told my parents, I want to be a psychologist, but I don't want to deal with people's personal problems. I want to deal with business problems. Started off college. Of course, I dropped out. Got married. My husband whisked me away. And few years later, we bought this business called Polycraft, and we print on flexible packaging. So we print potato chip bags, bread bags, pillow bags. We grew the business rapidly, but I felt like my husband wasn't around. Like he was almost never home. And I, of course, like any good Jewish mom, I complained to anybody that would listen. And that's when a friend told me about EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System by Gino Wickman. I wanted to implement it for us, but you can't be a dentist on yourself. So we hired great implementers to implement it in our company. We grew the business even more. We went from 30 to 100 employees. And what I tell people is you can grow your business without EOS. I just don't know if I would have peace of mind, stay married, or have the beautiful life that I have, right? About 3 years in, my husband comes home and he's like, this is exactly what you wanted to do. You always wanted to do business behavioral science, become an EOS implementer. I became an EOS implementer. And then I looked at all my clients, and what I observed is that all these visionaries have addictive personalities. They have addictive traits. Like maybe they're not addicted to alcohol, drugs, gambling, but they're all acting out as addicts. And all of their spouses and COOs, the people that they are attracting, are acting like codependents. Yep. They are pleasing, serving, losing who they are as a person, you know. So my journey for the last year, 2 years was really delving into helping people understand that dance and bringing more visibility and tools to people that are in supportive roles. And all this comes from my personal experience of being somebody. My husband used to gamble a lot. We're in a 12-step program. We are not shy about it. We talk about it. And that's when I had to look at myself. So you're asking what happened is in the beginning of recovery, every codependent is busy pointing the finger at the gambler and at the addict and saying, you're the problem. Yep. And then when the addict shapes up, sobers up, goes into recovery, and there's still chaos, sometimes there's a mirror that's forced in front of your face, and you have to look at yourself and say, okay, maybe I am the problem. And sometimes codependency is even bigger than addiction, the problem of codependency, because you're making people your higher power, and you have no sense of self. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I had to take a big mirror and look at myself and start my own healing journey of really being honest with myself, because I couldn't blame anybody anymore.
Yep. And that's that accountability step. And that is what brings people into my world, is that oh shit moment. It's, you know, I often joke that the only problem all of us have is ourselves. And thank God, because there's a lot you can do about that. How are you and your husband now? How different is it? You doing the work, him doing the work?
I can't describe it in words because it is so beautiful. Going from a place to needing to prove myself to letting myself being taken care of is huge.
This is something we are going to do this year because there's a word that pisses every German woman off I've ever met. It's called submit. It is understanding what small part of you must submit. Don't submit anything else, but you're submitting that one small part.
I often talk about the feminist movement, and I say, I think what we got wrong is we keep saying we want equality. Equality is half of the pie. And what we want is equity, a piece of the pie. If I have to do everything like a man, then nobody's going to hold the door for me. Nobody's asking me, hey, are you okay? Do you want water? And doing all the things that great guys do because you're capable. Go get your own water, open your own door.
And from a man's point of view, I mean, we are literally service animals. I mean, that is what we do, where we can feel appreciated and being of to protect and serve. I mean, that is the core of it. And robbing us of that, I don't need you for this. And it's like, well, what do you need me for then? That is my core wiring. So it's like, it is beautiful to hear. And how'd your husband respond? He grow up?
There is no, it's not a moment of time of responding. It's this journey of getting into a 12-step program, first trying to blame everybody, then mourning. So I'm sitting there and I'm like telling the other women I'm never going to have the life that I want and being angry. And this one guy looked at me and he said, if you're not planning to do anything about it, don't ever call me. And then another woman said, your job is to shape up. Your partner can either shape up or ship out. Yeah. And my partner has been shaping up all the time that at one point I can't keep up with him. He's grown spiritually way more than me, much faster, and as a giver and like this abundance person. So it wasn't like a response. It wasn't like a moment in time. It's a shift of like, we're always growing and somebody's always catching up.
And it feels that equity that is partnership. I mean, true partnership. How do you know you have it?
When I was 17, I walked into a therapist's office. I was made to go to therapy. And I sat there and asked the therapist, okay, how am I going to know that I'm healthy? Like if I'm here, I want to see the end, like pure visionary, right?
Big picture. Tell me where we're going.
Exactly. I'm not sitting here for nothing. Tell me where we're going. So this guy was super, super smart, old guy, a lot of credentials. And he told me, he said, Rachel, when your highs are not going to be too high and your lows are not going to be too low, you're just going to be, then you'll know that you're in a very healthy place in your relationships, in your personal life, with your kids. I think it's only like 15 years later that I can say the last half a year that my highs are not too high and my lows are not too low. And it's in my relationship too. I don't need to be needed. There's no doesn't have to be like we're either like having this huge argument or we're deeply in love. It just is.
Yeah, that's part of this driven identity model. It's really landing. It takes a minute to get rid of the word just okay. And then once you get rid of that word, it's like, holy, I'm okay. I am okay. And that is this capital S self really taking hold. And it's your knower. And we talked about that on this podcast for years. And you know it in your knower. It's a physical location in the body, interestingly. It's a seat of your soul. It's right sitting in a cup below your heart, or the fascia below your heart. Biologically comes online and gets stronger and stronger and stronger. No matter what happens, I know I'm okay. So you're not feeding the highs or chasing the highs is actually more accurate, or battling the lows. Right. You're just you're riding the roller coaster, but it's a roller coaster and you're not waiting for the cliff.
one of the first things I had to do for myself was wake up every day and say, with him or without him, I am okay. And I literally had to chant it because as codependents, we're so worried of not being liked, not being needed, not being seen, not being enough, that we become enmeshed and we become extremely attached. We become needy, right? So then the person that you're attracting is most probably an avoidant. So they're running away. So you're running to them, they're running away. And there is that chase. But the minute you say, I'm okay, then you're not needy anymore. Then the other person can come to you. So, right now I launched my Driven Spouse Forum. And this is for spouses of driven entrepreneurs, for wives. And the whole idea is for them to rediscover themselves independently of who they are. Not a mother, not a wife, not a spouse of an entrepreneur. Who are you? And it starts with simply saying, what's my favorite scent? Do I like lemon? Do I like thyme? Do I like wood or citrus? Most people don't stop and ask themselves, what's my favorite color? What's my favorite scent? And then we can say, okay, what do I truly want? Because I talk to spouses all the time. And when they say, my husband wants this, and then I don't know what to do, I say, okay, but what do you want? And they tell me, I never stop to think about what I want.
From the husband's point of view, being of service, providing somebody's wants and needs, we give up. Just tell me. Well, I don't know. And you didn't, then, it's loss of self for both. It's a loss of an identity of the couple. You're literally hiding in, Jung would say, you're hiding in someone else's shadow.
Exactly.
It feels so comfortable and familiar, and you're working on it, but it's never a self-reflective moment about you. It's incredibly effective defense mechanism to keep you stuck, wildly effective. Where an addict, if I do cocaine, most people, it's my joke, I didn't have a problem with it. It's the people around me that had the problem. Where, the COO or the wife that is just, oh God, you're so amazing. You're cooking 3 soups and you're doing all of this stuff. And okay, I guess I am. But there's no real moment where that's internalized. And that internalization process is, as you said, 5-6 years ago, it started.
Thinking about, you said, when a wife says, I don't know, I want to go back to that because that's important. Women, females, we want to be nice. We confuse nice and kind. So when we say, I don't know, it's because I want to come through as this flexible person, right? This person that I don't have wants and needs. I will serve you. I will do whatever you want, right? But the husband is saying, tell me what you want and I will deliver. Yeah. So there's that dance of I don't want to tell you what I want because I want you to figure it out, A, and B, because I don't want to look like somebody that has needs. And then the husband is just tell me what you want. I can never please you because you're not saying what you want. Being nice is the fake show that we put on. Whatever feels good in the moment. Being kind is sometimes doing the hard thing, but you're being kind to the greater future of whatever is in that, future or moment or person or relationship. And this is what I call about people being either self-focused, so that's their self-interest. They're always seeing the world through a place of what am I going to gain out of it?
Right.
Versus other focus is people that see, the codependents see a world as other focused of what do others think of me? How can I be needed? How can I please? Versus being kind is being center and situation focused.
Got it. Yeah. And so it is, but you can't be kind unless you're okay. It's so it's that underlying, and we'll get into this, that underlying assumptions that the lies that, I'm not okay is the lie. I'm not safe is the lie. I'm not needed is the lie. And
so everybody will hate me because I will say what I want.
It is narcissism. And it's a very interesting, because it's still, this self-focused. And, it doesn't seem from the outside like self-focused, but it is. You're still operating in a way of terror.
The highest level of codependency looks like it's a mask that looks like narcissism, because what ends up happening is you're controlling the narrative and the people, and you're telling yourself lies with the lie that you're taking care of people. I know what's your best interest.
Yeah.
I'm your wife. I know that it's good for you to come home for dinner, so I will do XYZ. Or as spouses of addicts, sometimes they hide the alcohol or the money or the jewelry because I don't want you to gamble or drink, so I am going to control the narrative, right? But when we realize that we can't control anything but ourselves, that is healing. But at that highest level, it looks like narcissism, just like you said.
And the visionary or the driven and the codependent are actually one person. it's really an interesting dynamic, teasing that apart.
This dance that happens is, and you talk about that in your book, Driven, is that drivens live in that narcissistic fantasy, which makes them very self-focused, which causes them to have low empathy. What that means is that they see the world through their frame of reference. So if I don't like something, then I assume everybody else doesn't like it. And they have a hard time. True empathy is putting yourself into the other person's shoe and saying, how would they feel if they went through this scenario, right? If a mother looks at a 5-year-old that his arts and crafts got ruined, the mother could be like, big deal, it's just arts and crafts. But if you are a 5-year-old and your arts and crafts got ruined, you're like, I am so sorry. That must really be hard for you. You worked hard on this, right? So people that are other focused usually have way too much empathy, which is really sympathy, and doesn't let them move on and maneuver and be kind. They're stuck in nice. People that are self-focused have low empathy, and that's what makes them look like narcissists, right, and become self-focused. So they're not true narcissists, because the minute they gain self-awareness, they do the work of the driven, right, and all the work that you do, they actually become the most giving people. And now here is something that I want to blow your mind with. What I've seen is that entrepreneurs that do the work, and we're so grateful to live in a world where there's so much emotional intelligence. All our masterminds, being part of all these masterminds that you know, is all about emotional intelligence. What happens is they become very healthy individuals. They're going home, they're trying to please their wives, and they turn into codependent because their spouse is still stuck in that old thinking. And now they're trying to please them. So there's that whole dance that happens.
Yeah. And untangling that dance, we'll dive deep. But it all comes back to really this individual identity. And that is Driven's, once we understand, that there's nothing wrong with us, that we're just an animal on this planet. We have a central nervous system, and I can change my central nervous system. The freedom that I've witnessed it, over the 20 years I've been doing this. I mean, some of the long-term clients I have are just blowing rainbows out their butts, and they have relationships that are golden. It's like, and from the outside looking in, it looks like magic. Truth is, it took a ton of work, and that work is worth it.